Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnston with the Bar Hill Group at Remax Camosun, host of Vancouver Island Time. I'm here with Andrew Plank
Hello, everybody. All
and
three of you.
Andrew's with Royal LePage. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's been a busy week.
Why has it been busy? What's been busy about it for you?
A lot of activity with listings, pretty active buyers. A lot of stuff's been kind of finalized or putting the finalization on it, so it's more management at this point. But helping people get into homes to do measurements and that sort of thing. Just running around. Good times.
You can,
All the fun.
if they've measured with Real Photo, you can ask for the for $15. They'll give you the very exact measurements of each wall.
Okay, the actual measurements. That's good to know. With Real Photo.
Yeah, if they've done that. So
Right.
if you're a listing agent and you've ordered your photos through Real Photo, or if you're a buyer's agent, you notice that they've been done that way, you can ask for the detailed measurements and they'll give them to
Okay.
you.
Have you tried that with any other providers?
Not yet, but I do know that they are there.
Yeah. Okay. I definitely have found the Matterport tours. If you use those, you can go in and actually do some pretty precise measurements of all kinds of different areas, heights, and all kinds of areas using that tool as well, which is quite fun.
And Matterport is like a 3D dollhouse type tour program.
Yeah.
So you use a camera, can see. Andrew, coming from the camera industry, being into that, do you have your own Matterport?
No, I don't. I've thought about it, but I also used to take my own photos, and I've realized that I am now a realtor, not a photographer, and we're hired to do the marketing and be the upper scale manager of these things. So every once in a while, I have to step in and do some corrections to the work I see, but no, I don't anymore.
Okay, no. Awesome. So today's topic is we're going to be discussing listings. So listing your house and pricing your home to sell. So often there's kind of two strategies. So strategy number one, the old strategy. What's the old strategy, Andrew? What do you think that is?
Wow. Realty Teachers is doing teaching questions. The old strategy of listing your home or pricing your home?
Pricing your home, yeah.
Okay, well, does this predate our actual careers here? Are we talking about like 1900s? Are we talking about?
No, we're talking since we started in real estate in July of 2006. The old strategy is where you list your house here and you hope for an offer and you're willing to accept a lower price. That's the old strategy.
That's still quite often in use today.
And do you find that it works?
I find it depends on the motivation needs and needs of the seller. But I find that if you're talking about doing the opposite and kind of underpricing, I'm not a fan of that entirely either. It's really, yes, I think people used to get told that we think we can get you this kind of money. And then the strategy was both a strategy around enticing someone to sell their home with you. And I'm not suggesting that people are making erroneous, they're optimistic, let's put it that way. And I tend to look at pricing, and when I'm talking to my clients, optimistic, realistic, and pessimistic. And let's look at what the pricing range is. And here's the probability of it selling in these different ranges, and here's the consequences.
I like that. Optimistic, pessimistic, and realistic.
Yeah, a lot of istics.
For me, I usually come up with two prices. One is the over listing price, which is the optimistic price.
Yeah.
Where I just honestly try and list at market value. And I do a very in-depth analysis, and then I'm trying to price it right on the money. And the reason why it's not under listing, I don't think. It's more about finding out what works for, again, I look at motivation. So sometimes the seller may say they want to test the market out, and maybe they're elderly and they don't want to have a quick decision. They'll feel too rushed. And so I'll price it where I think that that will give them some breathing room, both in terms of price and days on market. But generally, I'm trying to price it right where I think it's going to sell.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify something, because we're talking about when we price a home, but we don't price homes really. We give advice on housing price, and the seller chooses the price. But when we say we're pricing the home, we're talking about this is where we advise the price to be for marketing your home realistically.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to show some of your slides from your market analysis?
Sure. We can talk a little bit about some of the, it's really conceptual. This needs to be, these things go through rebrands and re-changes every once in a while. And this one, to be honest, I have meeting so many people over the last year and few years where it's what's called a warm lead. They already know me. I go in, we chat, we do a relatively informal market analysis. We talk about concepts, and a lot of this stuff doesn't come up anymore and get run through. So I guess I'm apologizing in advance for quality of these images. So first of all, we talked about realistic and pessimistic. Can you see this on can you share screen?
Yep.
Yeah, great. So one of the things that I like to talk about is, what are you trying to accomplish? Do you want to get sold for top dollar and get the most money in your pocket? Do you want to have a quick sale? And is it important to you to save on the marketing costs? In other words, are you going to be a stickler around what kind of commission you're paying? Some people will want to hire a company that does less marketing. And so I always say pick two. You can get two of these, but you can't get three. It's pretty hard to have all three where you get top dollar and sell quickly and save on the marketing efforts.
The real estate fees.
Yeah. Well, fees relate to efforts and the ability and capacity of an agent to act on your behalf. If you are working with an agent who is high volume and low cost, they're not going to have the time or attention to put into really fine details. It's the economics of how it works. So there's always a balancing act. And again, people get to choose how they work with this. But it's something I tend to, and I think you do too, but I tend to base my fees commensurate or similar to most of my colleagues. And that's how and then I try to show how my style, my efforts, my marketing is superior to others. So people can do a relatively apples to apples comparison. And it's not based on me saying, well, I'm going to save you money on marketing. And
right.
That's just a one thing. And that has not necessarily to do with price, but it does show that there is truly a relationship with this. And I do believe that.
There's the analogy, good, fast, or accurate.
Yeah. Okay. That's another good one.
Yeah. So the other thing is, if you go with, if you're saving on marketing costs, just understand that the buyer's realtor feels a bit of conflict because they're going to be trying to negotiate their commission at the same time as they bring in an offer, because they do want to get paid.
Yes, absolutely. And I've certainly been in the experience where if it's a for sale by owner, for example, and you have to really negotiate for your fee, it makes everything a lot harder to keep everything moving forward and active. And so it takes a little wind out of the sails. And you really want to have that wind in your sails when you're advocating for your clients. So one of the slides that I have here is just what is a market analysis? Like, what are we doing here when somebody's talking about price? And Jane, you can jump in here on your own. Or are we going to do this like monologue here for a bit, and then you're going to do your own?
I see. It's a good, to me. I can't see what the mauve square says. Does that say 3 bedrooms?
Yeah, it's just talking about the difference between those two homes: 3 beds, 2.5 baths versus 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. Like, one's immaculate condition, one's good condition. What are we doing when we're doing a market analysis? Is we are looking at your home And it's truly a market analysis. We're looking at what the market is doing. We're looking at what other homes on market have done and are currently out there competing with you. So we're going to try to slot your home into, I always treat it as, where does your home slot into versus the competition? And it might be that your home is 3 beds, 2 baths, and we're only seeing other 4 beds, 3 baths or something in the area that are, I'll take another step back, but when I'm looking for what's called comparable properties, I'm going to start for homes in the immediate vicinity of the home, the subject property. I'm going to look for homes that are as comparable as possible. And the combination of the two is the most ideal for coming with a sense of if every day of the week buyers are buying homes that are exactly like yours because you live in let's say a condo and it's cookie cutter, or in a subdivision that's cookie cutter, you can prove, relatively speaking, value. If it's more of a unique property, you have to look a little bit wider and think about functionality of the home, use case. But again, what kind of money are people going to be spending for this home? And is it reach a point where there's less interest because people have other options in that price range that are just more compelling?
I do a similar thing. I do a gap analysis, so I see where they fit in relation to, especially condos. You can actually, if you do like 2-bedroom, 2-bath condos in a specific area, you can see where the gaps are. Where maybe I'll bring that up when I do it. I'll just
yeah, to see that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's great, especially because that's part of marketing, supply and demand. What is out there? What's in high supply? Is your home one of many, or is it unique and filling a gap that may not be? Is there a niche that's being filled by that's not currently addressed? And keeping in mind and really letting sellers know that you could have a lot of competition today and none tomorrow, or vice versa. So timing is really important for getting on market. So that's another part of the conversation is around timing. And of course, I love this little concept that the value is, from the realtor's perspective, is going to be different than the seller's perspective. It's going to be different than the tax collector's perspective. Everyone's going to see that same property with a different set of eyes. And so when it comes to us actually pricing that home for market, we have to look at it from the eyes of the buyer and the eyes of the seller, and try to come up with a, understand where it's actually going to be marketable, and knowing that different people will look at it differently. And we're not selling to the building inspector, and we're not selling to the tax collector.
And sometimes it's important. The reason why you have the building inspector in there is because they don't have a vested interest in selling your home.
No.
They're very different.
What's your experience with, like, we've all seen appraisals listed in a listing, like appraised at $1 million, and they're asking $950,000. And so you would think, oh, this is a good deal if you based it on appraisal. What do you think of that?
I've been asked to come in and critique appraisals, and sometimes I find them very inaccurate. The reason why is because they may not be using good comparables. They may be looking at properties online, whereas I've been in the house. And specifically, I was asked to do one for a client who had a house in, where was it? It was in Oaklands at the time, and they were comparing a house that was on Westall, which backed onto a condo building on Hillside.
Right.
Was completely different. So I think, there's something to be said about knowing the market and knowing what you're looking at, and the fact I like being both a buyer and a listing agent, because then I'm looking around and I'm actually, as a listing agent, I'm hearing the response from people, and as a buying agent, I'm hearing what my clients are saying, and what's often what they're saying is what's happening in the market. They're reflecting what's happening in the market, like, I'm really not into shared laundry. No.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you can wear both hats, and you can advise based on both. And sellers don't necessarily want to hear the objections that buyers may bring, but it's really useful and helpful to be able to say that, and then hopefully find ways to address it in your listing.
So one thing about this this picture that you have here that I think is maybe a bit erroneous is, although the tax collector may think of your house as being $1 million.
Yeah.
Sometimes what happens is
$1 million is an average house today in Victoria, Jane.
well, assessment follows the market. So if the market's going up, assessment's going to be down here. And if the market's gone down, assessment's going to be up here. So often people will say, oh, well, it's like price below assessment. Well, assessment's the value of the property between May and October with an average in July last year.
Yeah. I know. This is a humorous slide. It's not meant to be necessarily accurate.
Right.
Now, I'll just go back to appraisals really briefly. And that further, I would say that appraisals are often purchased for a particular reason, whether it's for by the seller for a purpose of understanding their value, or by the bank for the purpose of mortgage. And sometimes for the different purposes, they will come in differently. And again, the appraisers don't actually see the properties. They also don't take the market trends into account. They're not looking at current listings in terms of comparison.
You mean assessors?
I'm talking about appraisers.
Appraisers see the property.
Appraisers don't see they don't look at current properties, and they don't look at the market, what the market is doing.
Right. Oh, right. So an appraiser looks at what's happened.
Yes. And
we're looking at what's happening.
Yes. Yeah, we're taking a more active look at value, whereas an appraiser and an assessor will look at a time in the past, a set time. Yeah. Sorry, we're getting a little confusing with assessors versus appraisers. But these are different ways of looking at value of a property, and that's what we're talking about today. So hopefully that's...
How do we price a home to sell, though?
Okay. Well, from my perspective, you chat with your clients and you find out if they're truly interested in selling. And then you price it so that it is attractive to buyers. And by that, I mean, well, let's go to another slide then, if I may, because we have a slide for everything. Let's just find it.
I find that people sometimes are afraid to price their home at market value because they think it'll go too quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then they don't, and they think, well, let's leave it on market for a long, long time, have a lot of really inconvenient showings, and eventually bring the price down to the price that it would have sold for.
Yeah, exactly.
But nobody wants the fear of saying, I think I sold this too soon. I'm having trouble bringing this other slide up. So let me just...
Sellers say, I don't want to give it away.
No, exactly.
And buyers say, the seller is making a bet that the market is going to go down. And the buyer is making a bet that the price is going to go up. I have a very similar slide to that, but we can talk about that.
Yeah. So when we're talking about pricing a home and how do we price a home, we're going to take into account what is selling out there and what is going to work for the seller, what's going to work for the buyer. But what's the price range that most sales are happening in? And I always like to start with the end in mind and say, okay, let's work backwards. What's the most realistic explanation? What's the most probable price you're going to sell for based on all the evidence that we can gather? It's this range. And that's based on what buyers tend to be paying and what sellers tend to be accepting. And from there, I would suggest that the higher up in the range you go, the less probable you'll have a quick sale. And the higher you go, the more of a gamble you take. There's nothing wrong with that. Just understand that you might be longer on market. And what do you want to do? But if you price in the common price range, you will actually be one of many still, perhaps, if there's a lot of properties on market. So you still have to have something that makes your property more compelling than the others. It will sell eventually in the common price range, in the middle, but you may, depending on your motivation, want to be on either side of this curve. Thoughts?
Can I share my screen?
Yeah. Do I have to hit stop share? What are we at?
No, I'll remove you. I'll share mine.
Okay.
So, okay. So here's me.
I didn't do that. I had that. There you go again, Jane.
Okay, the most important thing, so when we're looking for, being on realtor.ca is very important, especially in Canada. It's a very, very powerful program. So 90% of properties go through a realtor, either through the listing realtor, realtor.ca, the realtor's automated search, or they've seen it on some social media. And you can see those are small compared to the three types of sources, which are through a realtor. And this, pardon?
4. Real estate sign.
Oh, well, I mean, these
5.
are minimal.
Okay.
They're, right?
But,
and 90% are coming through the realtor or realtor.ca.
Yes, the system tends to be where people have eyes on the prize.
So sometimes a seller will say to me, well, is my property being seen by people? Well, yeah, it is, because what happens now is the listing goes through realtor.ca and then it gets syndicated out to a number of different sites.
Yeah.
And the reason why we do that is because then we can control where the data comes in. So when we first got into real estate, I used to syndicate my listings out myself. So I have to go in and edit them in all those different sites.
Every time there's a change in price, every time there's a change in listing description, if you've made an error in some bit of data that you need to update, to make that change everywhere on the internet is really difficult. But if it's syndicated, it's broadcast out, and it's syndicated to the areas where most people are looking.
And we also have an agreement with other realtors in the city, and we can check off a little box that says we allow other realtors to market this property. And that's for the benefit of the seller, so that the listing shows up everywhere that realtor is marketing.
Yeah, and we were talking about old school pricing versus new school pricing. There used to be an old school mentality of, I've got to protect this data. I'm not going to share it. This is my listing, and if somebody wants to come and get information about it, they have to come through me. I'm not even going to advertise the price. I'm going to advertise these teasers online, and if somebody wants information, they have to contact me. And I don't think Jane or I are either of that school. We're more of like, the more people we can share this information with, the more people who get the information about this property, the better chance we have of selling for our clients. And our job is to sell the property, not to gather potential buyers for ourselves, in that manner. So this shared method is pretty common. There's still many agents who don't like to share the data, but a lot more do these days, and it's a good way.
Also, when I'm marketing, I market to other realtors.
Yes.
Exclusively because, I want them to sell the property because of the rules around dual agency. So we have a two-pronged approach. One is to other realtors and the other is to buyers. And if I reach a realtor, I'm going to reach 200 to 300 of their clients. If I reach a buyer, I'm reaching one.
Exactly.
So if I'm advertising in Calgary to people who are, like, if I pick an ad in a newspaper, what I'm going to get is just buyer leads. I'm not going to sell the actual home. So that used to be a strategy I used when I first got into real estate, but I found it didn't work. Now, what I do is I focus on realtor.ca because I realize that that's where they're going to be going through. So I put all my media on realtor.ca as well. And I do sharing folders. So if somebody's got a realtor or a client who's interested, I have all the data, like the floor plans and let's say if it's a condo, all the strata rules, and if it's a house, maybe information, an aerial view of the property, so that a buyer can see all that through their realtor. Has to go through.
Yeah. This is some of the stuff that's not seen. It's sort of the below the hood stuff that people don't see, but when they're working with a realtor. But a good realtor does network with their colleagues. We're on a few private social media groups where we interact. I've definitely experienced the benefit of both helping people buy a home that I saw on there and selling homes that I've posted on there. And also just making the job easier for our colleagues means they want to do business with us. So this is less to do with pricing, but it does have to do with how quickly we can sell the home. If we're providing really good quality materials, a lot of that's again under the hood. Here's the this is not public information, but for our realtor colleagues, here's the ideal dates that our clients are looking for a closing. If you're bringing an offer and you want to make it attractive, why bother writing an offer that we're just going to have to counter? If all things being equal, it works for your clients and my clients. Here's what's included. Here's what's excluded. Here's what we're looking for. And I get all the time my colleagues saying, I really love how you've packaged the information. It's really great having all this information. A lot of times it's like pulling teeth trying to get it from the other realtor. And I just don't understand that, because it saves me so much work, actually, having that information up in advance, because I'm not answering that question 20, 30, 40 times over time. And it's just, everything is just, it's about helping people do business.
Exactly. Okay.
So pricing. Yes, this is a good one.
So interestingly, so I had a condo recently that was listed at 410, which was here. So just 10% above pricing. I mean, actually, it was worth 410.
Jane, I don't think we can see your mouse. So when you say it was here,
you'll
have to tell us.
It was just above that orange line. So it was in the plus 10% range, which is in the seller's desired price range. So what I did was matched what you did, which was that humpy line. And I put it in a vertical and I tied it in with this pyramid, because we're going to exponentially get more people as we go down the pyramid, which is in the buyer's price range. So as I said, the seller's betting that the price is going to go down and the seller is betting that the price is going to go up. So the seller doesn't want to give it away and the buyer doesn't want to pay too much. So the balance between that, which is on the left in that little white mixed color area versus market
overlap.
That's market value.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you price too high, literally the buyer doesn't see it. If you price too low, you can sell it too quickly, and we have ways to kind of mediate that. And the way we do that is we may hold off on offers if it's a hot market. And sometimes, like, we don't know that it's a hot market. It just comes on all of a sudden. And a great example is just after COVID, the openings, everybody started calling their realtor and buying right away and selling their condos and trying to get into homes.
I did about half a year's business in about a month.
Yeah.
Can you go back one? I just want to, I use these same slides. One thing I would say about this is this talks about the percentage of buyers looking for property as you go up. It gets smaller percentage as you go up. I also talk about again, I like probabilities. You mentioned the word gamble, but the probability of selling gets less and less the higher you go up. And the problem with pricing too high is people will assume you're unreasonable, because buyers are actively working, looking at properties, and they've got a strong sense of where the market is. They will see a property that they feel is unreasonable, and they won't want to deal with an unreasonable seller. And they'll say, oh, the seller can always take the seller will say, well, somebody can always bring me an offer. But that is not sound logic. Somebody can always bring an offer on the market value.
Well, it's kind of like as well. They feel that you're being aloof if you price a property too high. And there are people who price their property not to sell because they really don't want to sell. They just like having their house on the market. Yeah.
Now true. And then the other side of it is, if you're on the lower side of this price point and you price too low, you're going to see a lot of people are going to see this property. It creates a lot of churn. I remember a listing once one of our colleagues listed probably 200,000 under value. And when we talk about pricing a property low, we're not talking about that kind of purposeful undervalue. This was like, I think, a $700,000 property that was listed at 500,000. That just created, like, I had quite a few of my clients calling saying, can I see this property? Can I see this property? I've got to get through. And I said, you guys, this property's, and these people were people who were not qualified to pay 700,000. They were looking in more of a 5 to 550 range. I said, you're not going to be able to get this. It's going to sell. The seller's not going to sell for the price it's worth that they're asking. It's going to go multiple offers. It was an absolute zoo while I was there. Half the realtors in Victoria were showing the property.
Was it on the Lamson?
It was not Lamson. No, it was in behind Mayfair Mall.
Okay. Yeah.
But the point was that it was really a waste of time for everyone. And they actually didn't end up selling that property because they were, although they had it listed low and they were hoping to get multiple offers above asking, they didn't accept any of the many, many offers that came in. They didn't feel like any of those were high enough. Right. And the point is that when you see a property that's too low, you think, what's wrong with that property? And you also think, why would I be the one, if I'm going to offer on this, if it's really too low, if I'm going to offer on this, am I going to just pay market value? Like, why would I offer market value when I could go buy something else for market value? I'm still looking for a deal here if it's underpriced. I'm hoping that nobody else is willing to pay more and I still get a deal.
So what's interesting is there was a house, 2 houses on Derby a few years ago. And one had a beautiful garage and it was like stunning. And then there was a house down at the end of the cul-de-sac near the golf course. And nobody was looking at that property because of the stunning house on the corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we ended up having, like, we just went in and scooped that little house at the end, and there was a bidding war. Everybody's attention was on this property. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go down there. It has everything anyway.
Zig when others are zagging. That's the always a good one. The last point I'll make about this one, because I've always thought that this is a little bit erroneous, this triangle, I'm losing my words.
Pyramid?
Pyramid, thank you. It's actually not this shape. If you think about it, the shape is actually more of a curved line. It goes wider at the base and to a very thin top. And then it definitely stops at some point where, unless you have a really specific reason for buying that home and you know that there's a diamond mine directly underneath that you could profit off of, you're not going to pay above the market value. But this gets to be wider and wider as you go lower. And so it's kind of like there's a point in the slope where you hit market value. And once you get too steep in the slope, it's just not going to work. There's a point also where anybody would buy this home.
Right. And because it's such a good deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And but this is a good point to talk about pricing, because if you're right at the very top of where the sellers and the buyers top line is, you're going to just reach those top buyers. So what I say to people is, let's say that top of that orange line is on the pyramid is $500,000. If you price it 502, literally the people looking up to 500 will not see your property. Mm-hmm. And I've seen this where my client wanted over $1 million on a property, and we priced it at $1,070,000. And then I said, well, we need to do a price reduction. And at that point, there's going to be kind of cusps where action is happening. And right now, especially, there are cusps in terms of new construction because of breaks on property transfer tax and breaks on GST and breaks on this and that. And at the $1 million mark, now you have to go minimum 20% down. Yeah. Would you want to add something?
No, I was just saying, yeah, you've got it.
Yeah, so literally, so when we lowered the price, we lowered it. He wanted it lowered it to $1,030,000. I'm like, well, I don't think $1,030,000 is going to do it, but we'll try. Nothing happened, and then what we did was we relisted it at $999, And this was when properties weren't $2 million. And literally people came in and they thought it was first day on the market because they did not see it prior
They
to
hadn't
that.
seen it before. Yeah. Did you end up with multiples?
It was a really slow market, but we ended up selling like within $5,000 of asking.
Of asking. Okay. I've definitely seen where a price reduction comes in where it takes it into that range where there actually are buyers. It's kind of like if you're fishing and you can fish at different depths and the fish are at a certain depth only. Your hook could be 10 feet too high or 10 feet too low and you'll never catch anything. So you have to be in the area where the fish are biting. So yeah, definitely pricing is so important. There you go.
Yeah, and this is like a really great graph to just show average days on market. So if you're asking too much, which is the beginning of the graph on my left, it shows that we want to, I'm at home, that's why my dog barked.
Does your dog not bark when you leave home?
She wants to go outside. Anyway, so what happens is if you're priced too high, you would do a price reduction. And ironically, if you had listed where the market value was, you probably would have gotten multiple offers. But because now we're listing above, now the days on market is showing, we're actually working against ourselves. And so sometimes sellers need to go through the process of, I want to try it here. Okay, let's try it here. And then, but when you get market value, you suddenly get a lot of viewings and then okay, this is the right price. So it's best to start in that range.
Hope springs eternal, and people always think optimistically in terms of the price, and they don't want to undo. Can you keep it at that for a moment?
Yep.
They don't want to go too low. But what happens is also there's the greater fool theory. Nobody wants to be the greater fool. Once a property's been on market and let's say where it reaches market value in those steps is 60 days on market. After 60 days on market and you come to market value, someone's going to look at that and they're not going to recognize necessarily that it's now come down to market value over time. They're going to see it and say, wow, this property, nobody's bought it yet after 60 days and they're asking this much money. And that just looks like a normal home to me now. There must be something wrong with it. I'm going to not really give that any attention. So it's only until the price becomes really compelling that someone says, oh, yeah, calls their realtor. I've got to see that home. It's actually looking pretty good. So that's why getting the price right early on is really important. A really key piece.
I want to show you something that I've done. Hold on. So this is share screen. Oh, so I just did this market analysis of a condo while we were sitting here. And this is something that I did yesterday for someone. And as you said, it was a warm call. It was very, it's going to come up small. So I apologize. Okay, so really you don't need to see the numbers because I know you can.
This got okay. Helpful.
But what it's showing is, if I'm looking at this, is that there are gaps. Do you see this gap here, this gap here, this gap here? And then as we move here, there are like more gaps, bigger gaps.
Yeah.
So this tells me where the properties are hanging. So this is 2-bed, 2-bath condos at in the West Shore. And I'm just going to go in here. Can I do this? Yes. Okay. So I'm seeing 419 and 409 are places where there are condos that aren't selling. And I'm seeing long days on market here of 112, 155 days. And then I'm seeing when we get down to the 400 range, I'm seeing like 14 days on market, 6 days on market. There's one here, 112 days on market. That one actually faces the highway. So, and I'm just seeing that when I'm pricing for a client, I'm saying, you know what, these are new, some of these are new construction and they're not selling. So that tells me that it's long days on market and perhaps we should be pricing a little less than that. Here's where the gap is and here's where things are selling.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain this?
Hang on. Oh, sure. Yeah. So this was, do you want to explain this? Sorry. Am I in trouble? So this is just a graphic that shows the relationship between your condition of your property, price of your property, and whether you're sort of where you are in the market based on that relationship. So the better the condition and the better the price versus the comparables, the more you're on the bullseye in the target. And as your condition becomes less great relative to the comparables, it's not talking about the condition of your home in general, but relative to the comparable properties in that price range. Is it less good quality? Okay, you're moving into no man's land where probably not going to get an offer. There might be a few eyes on the prize. There are probably people looking to get a great deal. And then you reach a point where you're just not even considered. So when your price and your condition are not as good as the other properties available for sale, nobody's going to consider your home because it's just not seen as a good deal, as a reasonable deal. People are not necessarily looking for a good deal out there. And most of my buyers that I'm working with are always coached that, there really don't exist amazing deals out there anymore. There are too many people with eyes on the prize and too many transactions that may happen. If those transactions do happen, they're probably happening off market, behind the scenes. What you're seeing on the market itself is people doing business. People showing properties, buying properties for reasonable prices, selling properties for reasonable prices. And every once in a while, an amazing price comes up on a home. But because there's so many people in this current market, for example, looking with really good, competent agents, you're going to see the homes then get offered on and bid up to asking or to the price they should have listed at and sold at. So everything kind of finds its balance and finds its place is my point. I want to say another thing, because you were talking about your example of a listing at over $1 million. And you said, like, we were at $1,070,000 and we talked about reducing to $1,030,000, and I said that's not going to have any effect. I do have a tool that I use with my sellers. It's part of my weekly report, and it says, here's what's going to happen if you adjust your price up or down. Here's how many more realtor searches it shows up on. And remember, we were talking earlier just how important it is and how many homes sell through realtor efforts or through the fact that it's on the MLS or part of that system. People are engaged with their buyers, with their agents on property searches. They tell their agents, look, find me a home up to $1 million. Those agents plug in a home up to $1 million in the search. It outputs homes up to $1 million. That home at $1,070,000, at $1,030,000 doesn't even show up. So those buyers are not seeing it. So it's really helpful to be able to show your clients, look, you're looking at, we're currently this price, or you're looking at listing at this price. Here's how many buyers are actually actively seeing your home. Here's how many more will see it at this price point. And sometimes it makes no difference, even if you make a $50,000 or $70,000 change in price. And sometimes it makes a major difference, even just for $5,000.
Right.
So it's important to know.
Yeah, we did that on a listing last week. We just took it down a few thousand, and it made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Just because they were, we all of a sudden went below a cusp. I'm just going to show you what's going on with the market right now, which is we're going to start doing this prior to our discussions normally. So how has your week been in the market?
Yeah, asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in another, I was just trying to pull up something else here. So you just run with this because I'm trying to find another example document.
So this is what's going on in the market right now. Up to date. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. Okay. So we have to date in September 14th, 414 unconditional sales. That's compared to 616 for the month of September last year. So we are ahead of the game. That shows to me to be a very active market. New listings were at 566 compared to 1,168. That is at par, really where we were last year. And in terms of active listings, total number is 2561. That's compared to 2823. And as we explained at our last week, we have sold the same number of houses this year as we did last year, but we've sold them more in the past 2 months than we have previously. And new listings, we can see list to sale ratio on that bottom graph there, that you have a very good chance of selling your property. It's 222 pending to 278. That doesn't mean that those properties exactly have sold, but it shows the activity on the market. And 122 price reduction says to me that people are getting serious. Let's get these homes sold. Any comments?
Yeah, well, when I see a lot of price, you don't often see price increases. That's uncommon. It's generally someone has really made a mistake. Or usually, often if the realtor themselves input the information wrong, and then they have to correct it. But when you see price decreases of a good number, it suggests that people have been optimistic in their pricing and are having to make some changes. So it's not. When you see that kind of number versus the new listings, you do also see, make some assumptions that there are people either being, listing a little too high and having to make course corrections. Not everything on the market sells immediately and for full asking price. And a lot of people have that sense or that belief when they hear it's a hot market. Oh, everything sells. I can ask anything from my home and anybody will buy it. It's not true. And the more people get that impression that it's a hot market, the more people are going to overprice their homes, and then the more price decreases you're going to have to see to get those homes sold. So, yeah, that would be my comment. What do you think?
I agree, and often, like, I call it being cute when a seller wants to list high.
Did you pat them on the head and say, "Oh, isn't that cute"?
Pardon?
You pat them on the head and say, "Oh, isn't that cute"?
Yeah, I think it's what's a song? You can't always get what you want. I mean, if you go into a candy store and there's 10 chocolate bars and they're all priced at $1 and this one's priced at $1.50, no one's going to buy the $1.50.
Unless it's Toblerone.
Okay, we have 12 minutes left. You want to show your last?
I want to show another slide. You were using, this is going to be hard to see, but let me see if I can enlarge this a bit. But you were showing a slide that talked about the various values, ranges, the price points. Let me see if I can enlarge this a lot.
I love this. I love that. I use this a lot.
This is a great slide. This shows, so for example, this is for single family homes in Victoria. And we'll start with just the average, which is that, well, let's go the first white column to the right of the gray. So for the city of Victoria, and then on the left, you've got the different price points. You can see what is sold.
Current and year to date.
Current listings year to date. So you can actually see how many listings are in different ranges. And I think if you look at this like a graph, a bar graph going 1, 3, 2, 5, you can see there's a number of listings in this price point. You can see it kind of lowers down maybe around here. You can see it builds up right around here. What you do get to see then by watching the year-to-date and all of the other properties is just where the heat is in the marketplace. You can see how once you get under 1 million, there's way more. Anyway, this one's a little hard to show directly on this slide, but the point is that you can really get a sense of where the peaks and valleys are for property pricing by using this graph as well. And when you talk,
3 over, go up to the top. Scroll up. Okay, so if you look at Esquimalt, go down.
Sorry. Hang on.
Oh, geez. If you go to Esquimalt, you can see like over 1 million, there's only being 2 sales.
So Esquimalt is, right. Okay, so here we are. Esquimalt is the third set of double columns after the gray. And so we don't see any listings over in the multi-millions until we get down to 1.5 and then 1.4. And then really it's only under $1 million that you start to see those properties. And then you see a peak around the 8 to 850 range. You can see that's a hot spot.
Yeah. And what's cool, what I tell people is buy in a Esquimalt, because for the same era of house, same character, same distance from downtown Victoria, not as Tony an area, not as high priced an area. You are not
Tony, did you say?
Tony, Tony, not as high end.
Okay. I think that we were talking about Tony Joe for a minute.
No. You are going to see much more value for the property. This happens in condos too. So I actually just had a buyer call me from Vancouver who wants to move into a Esquimalt because of this data. So
I would say too, when you look at where the hotspots are, the West Shore has been building a lot. There's a lot of new construction, great values out in the West Shore. And people tend to either be like, let's go to the West Shore for value and new construction, or let's be in the core because we really like the core. And I see those two areas growing, and you sort of think of it as two expanding circles, and eventually they meet. And where they meet is View Royal and Esquimalt. And View Royal is another area that I feel is really undervalued, really underappreciated and undervalued. There's waterfront there that's beautiful. There's some really nice homes. You're not really that far from Victoria. We now have the Mackenzie interchange that makes it a lot easier to come to and fro. So Esquimalt and View Royal, two areas that I think they're on the cusp of really being.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and coming from Toronto and seeing how once the city amalgamated, how would I go back and I see these areas that nobody would have lived in before that are very popular now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think next week, why don't we talk about hot areas of Victoria?
That's a great one. Pockets. How about some of our favorite little pockets too?
Okay.
Yeah, like little hidden gems that like people don't necessarily, like the Athlone Court kind of area or whatever, like little areas where people don't necessarily know until they've driven into that area and gone, what the heck is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Here's a little gem. Okay, yeah. So don't forget to subscribe. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to watch us every week. We're going to be on the market, talking about the market every day, Monday at 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And anything you want to say about?
Well, I don't think people need to watch us every week, but like once a month would be nice if we get enough people. I just think like every week is probably a little much for anyone to see us.
No, I disagree.
Nice.
You're amazing.
So are you. I love you, Jane.
Okay, everybody. So stay tuned next week. We're going to be talking about our favorite hotspots in around the city. If you are in the industry and you want to be a guest, let us know. We're going to be looking for guests in the future to talk about different aspects of real estate development. What else? Mortgage.
And all aspects of real estate, whatever it is.
Yep.
Outside the box. Yeah. All good.
Okay. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you
everyone.
Monday at 10 a.m. Bye-bye.
Bye now.